For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the Israeli Affairs researcher, Mr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar. Good evening to you, sir, and welcome to Qnews and this special coverage. Now, China backed several Palestine-related resolutions at the General Assembly. Does China or Beijing stance change diplomatic dynamics? Does it have this leverage, or can really reaffirm its existing position?
Good afternoon, all of you and all the viewers. Of course, China has a lot of factors and has forces. Economic force cannot be neglected, and supporting the human rights of Palestinian people. They have military force and have the leverage on pressuring and have the veto right in the Security Council. In this regard, I think we can have the leverage on China, especially after the negotiations of Saudi Arabia with Iran for the interest of both sides and for the intervention of the Palestinian picture and view for the Hamas side. And in this regard, we can depend on the role, China's role, that have an active role and to have a balance in the American and Israeli side.
Right. Now, what practical effect could the latest UN General Assembly votes have on aid flows into Gaza, on UNRWA's support, and the protection mechanisms on the ground?
Of course, it has an important role because it sheds light on the political issue and the main issue, because the main issue is the occupation. And for implementing what was agreed on Sharm el-Sheikh on ceasefire and ending this war, Israeli side breached all the articles that were agreed on internationally. It just focuses on one factor for his interest and to achieve this target. This target is similar for what is happening in Lebanon, in ceasefire in Lebanon, and to abide by it in one side is just the Lebanon defeat. But Israeli is breaching this article. So these practices from the side of Israeli and on behalf of China and from the Security Council open the way on and allows what is practicing or what is making Israeli and the Netanyahu government to breaching or continue more breaching in the articles.
Right. On the other side here, Prime Minister Netanyahu has dismissed the corruption charges as politically driven. How does this domestic case shape Israel's international posture?
It has a stress on the corruption charges because what Netanyahu makes reflects his weak position, and he had the charges and is fear of the punishment, not only for his power position, but I think that Netanyahu has just a few weeks to study this proposal, especially it's incomplete, and there is no rejection and there is no regression. This side has to make it with the Prime Minister to make an early elections and to apologize or to not continue or to this supports the Palestinian stance that Netanyahu is the crime of what is happening in the war. Also, internally, he is charged of the corruption, and he has to be treated as any criminal. This opened the way for internal conflicts, and it supports the rejection of these policies after it was destroyed and disrupted. After many parties and with the U.S. Israeli has made airstrikes and continuing airstrikes and to continue and to achieve its targets.
So do you think the internal situation in Israel would really reflect on the ceasefire and on the negotiations? And what role would regional mediators and the United Nations play to keep the ceasefire on track?
Of course, the mediators has a great role, an important role for exerting effort in this regard. And in what happened in Doha Forum, they discussed this issue. The European side and Turkey representative and Egyptian Prime Minister and Prime Minister of Pakistan, they recognized Palestine as an independent country and they continued their negotiations. And their interest in the security side in Gaza Strip that has to control or to cease fire and to apply it, that Israeli breaching. So in this regard, I think that changes or internal changes in Israel has its benefits on this path, because this path Netanyahu is trying to stop it, but with the results and with the continuing of the defendant in Rafah passage and with the Israeli army to continuing committing crimes in this region. So, despite the humanitarian war from the Israeli part, I think that there is a revises from the Israeli side and force the Israeli government to abide by ceasefire and to have international force for peacekeepers to save peace in the country, not to force peace, and to not sing the same songs of the Israeli side. I think these results will be reached in the coming month.
So, how is the internal situation inside Gaza affecting any political track towards governance, security, arrangements, and reconstruction planning? All right, let me repeat the question. The internal situation inside Gaza, what we're seeing inside Gaza, how will the situation reflect on the political work, the governance of Gaza, and security arrangements, plus, of course, any reconstruction plans? Hello? From Cairo, that was the Israeli Affairs researcher, Mr. Ahmed Fouad Anwar. We thank you so much for being with us here and for the discussion on Qnews. It seems like we lost contact with you, but thank you very much for being with us. And as the diplomacy accelerates and the ceasefire hangs on, what comes next? The region is watching for timelines, verification, and real access on the ground. At the UN, the votes are cast, but the tests and fairness and accountability remains to be seen. That brings us to the end of our special coverage for this hour. For more stories and live updates, follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEGY. From all of us here, many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.